Well, Cape Cod is about as far away from the Rio Grande as you can get, over 2,000 miles to be exact. But Camp Edwards, the National Guard base in Bourne, has become an unlikely flashpoint in the national debate over illegal immigration. That's due to a proposal that the base host some of the immigrant children now crossing over the U.S. Mexican border. It's an idea that's forced residents to think carefully about where they stand on a controversial political issue. By all accounts, the tens of thousands of unaccompanied children streaming over the U.S. border is a humanitarian crisis, and Governor Deval Patrick says Massachusetts must help.
I don't know what good there is in faith if we can't and won't turn to it in moments of human need.
The governor has proposed housing up to 1,000 children at one of two sites, Camp Edwards in Bourne or Westover Air Reserve Base in Chicopee. And Patrick says local governments won't bear any costs.
Everything for the children will be provided for the children at the facility at the expense of the federal government. How they contract that out, I don't know.
But the idea of housing migrant children at Camp Edwards has divided Cape residents.
That's what America has done. We've had lots of waves of new people come into this nation. It's the name of the game.
Why are they bringing more people into this country when we can't even afford to pay for our own children?
It's also prompted protests, like this one at the Otis Rotary last weekend.
Not a good thing for the country, not the way it's happening. And no one here is against immigration. It's the illegal part of it.
At a town meeting last Tuesday, the Board of Selectmen debated whether to support the governor's plan to use Camp Edwards. Board Chairman Peter Meyer says it was a contentious meeting.
Do I regret the decision of the other night? No. But do I regret the process? Yes, the process would be different next time. Because there are some people that were a little off the cuff, to say the least, at the podium.
In the end, the board voted unanimously to send a letter of opposition to the governor. Meyer says there were too many unanswered questions.
Are we going to have a voice in the creation of the Memorandum of Understanding process? That's going to be the biggest thing, because if we are going to have a voice in all that, then at least we'll have some controls in place within the agreement that if the town provides services, we will be reimbursed.
Meyer says he and the town are sympathetic to the plight of migrant children, but to a limit.
The children should not be neglected. However, we have our own children here that need the help and the services as well.
The town is now waiting for the governor's response. And earlier today, a coalition of civic leaders gathered in downtown Crossing to show their support for Governor Patrick's proposal to house immigrant children in Massachusetts. Mariama White-Hammond was at that rally. She's a community organizer and a minister at Bethel AME Church. And also joining us is Republican State Representative Keiko Orrell, who represents Taunton and Lakeville, among other districts. Welcome to you both.
Thank you.
So, Representative, we have been told that this is a specific term, about 4 months, that these children will come here, up to 4 months maximum, that this will be paid for by the federal government. It will not tap any local resources. So what is your concern?
Well, we hosted the Minority Leader, Brad Jones, hosted an immigration summit last week with Secretary Polanowicz and Secretary Cabral, members of ICE and other local and federal local officials. And so the concern is that it's 1,000 beds. It's not 1,000 children, that those children will be processed average of 35 days, and then that more children will be coming through because it's 1,000 beds, not 1,000 children. And I keep hearing that repeated, that it's 1,000 children, and I think that's some misinformation.
You're concerned that there are adults coming as well?
No. That it would be unaccompanied alien children, but that it's not just 1,000, that it's 1,000 beds, and that there could potentially, we don't know how many children will actually come through the system.
But regardless, if they're housed specifically within this area, and again, we're told that they won't go into the community and it'll all be paid for by the federal government, regardless of how many is coming, if it is contained and it's not tapping state resources, do you still have an issue?
So what we learned at the Immigration Summit was that 80% of those who come through will be placed with a sponsor, and that 20% of them will go to federally funded foster care system. With the system in Massachusetts, Lutheran Services, they have one facility and they have 20 beds. I don't believe that we can properly care for these children, and I know that we don't have the resources to to take care of those, because I believe that within that 80% of the kids that will go to sponsor families, some of those will come into our Massachusetts communities.
All right, well, Maria, let me bring you into this as well. There was a Boston Globe poll in which about half of the people agreed with the representative. Do you know what you're contending with, that there is a large faction of society who thinks this is not the right move and do not side with the governor?
Well, I think we really have to understand that there's two questions here. There's a question of capacity and there's a question of morality, right? We can have a lot of conversations, and we've been debating the morality around immigration for a while, and we could certainly talk about that. But I do want to talk a little bit about capacity. The reality is that these children are coming to the United States, and some of it is because of situations that are unimaginable in other parts of the world, but they're coming nonetheless. Right now, Texas and California are really doing the majority of the work in terms of trying to figure out how to process these children, and they've been very clear that they don't have the capacity. What I believe is that ultimately, Massachusetts as a state, we have amazing capacity. We have one of the best public health systems in the country. I was there when folks came after Hurricane Katrina, and I was proud of our state. I was proud of how we were able to step up, how we were able to meet the need. And I believe that as Americans, it shouldn't just be two states bearing all of this burden, and we as a state have what it takes. I think that we can step up to the plate, and I think we might even be able to show Texas and California a little bit about how it can be done.
Right, Representative, this is a state that or this is a country that does have the resources. So how do you look at that moral obligation that this country has in being able to, whether people agree with it or not, actually being able to serve children? And again, that's sort of a wide term. It's children aged 3 to 17.
Yes,
some people argue
right.
At the end of that spectrum, they're adults, young adults. But what about the moral obligation to help if we can?
So we certainly have compassion for the plight of these children, and we have compassion for those who are legally trying to immigrate to our country. The issue becomes that we don't have the resources to take care of the American citizens that are here today. So my office just got a call today of a homeless mom with a 5-year-old. We have real issues with homelessness and homeless veterans. We have issues with our elderly. We need to be taking care of American citizens and putting that as a priority. And I don't believe this is a right fit for Massachusetts when other states have stepped up. Illinois, Wisconsin, other states are saying that they're willing to take them. So we've had vigorous opposition, and the polling data shows that not everyone is okay with this, but we've also not had the transparency from the administration as to what is happening with this type of decision. The state representatives weren't included, and the governor is unwilling to meet with the representatives from Chicopee to have the discussions.
Right, and in truth, this happens above him. But
I mean, I think for me, a few years ago, I had a young person right here in Boston who was a victim of gang violence and ended up living in my house because he was being threatened. And eventually, we helped him resettle to another part of the United States. Ultimately, it was challenging. It was scary. There were times when I wondered if my house would be targeted, but it was the right thing to do. And I think it's the same thing with these children. I can't imagine sending them back in a situation where they might be killed. So yes, I'm not saying we don't have challenges. I'm not saying we won't have to figure it out, but it's just the right thing to do.
Well, as I mentioned earlier, it's a decision that comes even above the governor's head, so we wait to see what's actually going to happen. Representative Keiko, I'm out of time, but Keiko Oral, thank you so much for coming. Mariama Whiteham, and we appreciate your coming.
Thank you.